So welcome everybody. First of all, apologies. Don't know how this is going to go because we're making it up as we've gone along, but we guarantee it'll work it out. We'll work it out. So we're here, of course, for my mother, my sister's Catherine's mother, Yvonne Skellern. I think I might have to do this. Excuse me. Okay, so she was the youngest daughter of 4 children, of course, mother to Catherine and I, and grandmother to Courtney, Matt, Sophie, and even a great-grandmother very recently. It was tragic that she couldn't quite get to meet him, but that's the way things played out in life. But whether you're whether it was family or friends, and she had lots of them throughout her life. Here in Greenwood Park, previously my father was in the Air Force, so we moved around. She amassed a lot of friends, and a lot of them can't be here, like Carolyn, Mary, Auntie Kay, her sister, was just so torn up about this. In San Francisco, Catherine's son Matt, who's in Canada at the moment, Uncle Trev, but they're all here in heart, I believe. So, I think.
So what we are going to do, as Brian said, we've been talking and thinking about how do we do this? How do we tell the story of the remarkable life of Yvonne Mary Skellern? So we're going to do it in bits, with us starting and with me starting to tell the story, and it will give many of you who only knew her towards the end of her life a glimpse into who she was and where she came from. And it's quite a remarkable story. And helpfully, our mother left us notes to help prepare for this. So I'm going to use them a little bit to tell the story. So it starts that Yvonne was born in Rangoon, or Yangon as it's now called, which is the capital of Burma, or now known as Myanmar. She was born in 1938, and war was to break out shortly after she was born. So she remembered that the day that Rangoon was bombed, her mother had taken her out shopping, and the bombs just started falling, and their dad had to search through the streets and the bodies to try and look for them. And very soon, her mother was evacuated from Burma to India with all of the 4 children. And that happened because her father worked for the government, and at that time it was under the rule of Great Britain, and he was one of what they called the last ditches, and was hence responsible for burning the government documents so that he wasn't able to leave his post at that time. So literally, our grandmother and the 4 kids were sent to India to a refugee camp, and he had to trek at a later time, and he was struck down with malaria and got very sick as a result of that. And Mum remembered that her mother had a brother, and his family actually died on that trek. She had also some aunts and cousins who remained in Burma during the war because they were unable to leave, and she also remembers, and I've heard her speak fondly about a grandfather who lived across the Irrawaddy in a lovely big colonial home set amongst the villages and paddy fields, and she could vividly remember holidays, and she remembers after the war the insurgents then took over that home, and during the war the Japanese had taken over that home as their headquarters, and she mentioned that her cousins had to actually work for the Japanese but were treated well, but then she also remembered that there was a friend that she went to school with whose father was tortured by the Japanese, so there was this kind of conflicting perspectives about what was happening at that time. So when the evacuation took place, they were in various refugee camps, and our grandmother just left with one suitcase because that was all that she had time to grab with 4 children. And her eldest brother Uncle Cyril was there to help, and apparently ended up with an assortment of odd shoes. And apparently, this is quite a funny story, she remembers that there was an ex-British Army officer who took it on himself to look after our family. I think Granddad must have deputised him to do that. But by all accounts, he was even more afraid than our mother's mother, and they heard lots of funny anecdotes about Major McNamara, who would cower under the beds in mortal fear, all the while assuring Mum's mother that he would look after them. So she does have recollections of her days in India. She remembers her mother being in uniform, and her mother had joined the WAACs. Nikki, that would be WAAC, like the Air Corps or something,
Yes,
Women's
yes.
Air Corps, yeah. And I remember that, and my mum can remember there were lots of cheeky monkeys in India, and that her mother was in mortal fear of them, and one had actually tried to attack her, but her mother's shrieks gave it a bigger fright, she thought. So then they stayed in Calcutta and Bangalore until the government found a home for them. And the best recollections that she has, and Mum was very young at this stage, so I think Brian and I were talking that her recollections were as a young child without a broader understanding of the context. I think the older siblings were much more aware of the horror and the war and the displacement, but for Mum, she remembers them making toys out of mango seeds, and cotton reels became tanks, and it was all very jolly hockey sticks and fun for Mum. So she remembers they stayed in a house in Simla where the British Raj came to escape the heat. And there was 7 feet of snow one year, and one time there was a bear outside the door that woke up the cook and gave the cook a huge fright. And there was a lake at the bottom of that place that froze up in winter, and they used to slide around and play, and then they get thrown out by the man who actually owned the property. And she remembered that her mother would take them every week for afternoon tea, and they would have a choice of one cake, and they would recall stories of her brother Pete, who when he saw the cake platter set down by him thought it was all for him, and his eyes just lit up with utter delight. So yeah, they had no toys, but they spent their days having such wonderful times. We were wonderfully happy. So in the middle of all of that, she had such positive recollections. So they were in India for about 3 years and then returned back to Burma, and her dad then was continuing with the government service. And earlier on, Mum had gone to a convent school, and she could not remember any fun times at all during those years. However, when she got to high school, her mother offered the children an education at the school that she was teaching at, which was a co-ed Methodist school, and it offered a GCE education. And her parents knew at that time, because Burma had now got independence, it was really going to be essential. There was no rooms for the likes of us, she's written, so we'd grown up in a British environment, and soon Burma was to phase out English as the first language, so it became really important that there was some education that would take them somewhere. So the school actually was the only one in Burma that offered a London exam pass, and school then took on a different atmosphere. It was during her high school years, she'd written this at the age of 55, but with the happiest days that she could recall, because she was introduced to sport. And we're going to come back to that theme. She became captain of the hockey team and competed in an outside tournament on weekends, and it was the best team in the country. And then they were chosen to play against a selected team representing Burma during the 3rd Burma Olympics, and they won the gold medal. So we've actually got a certificate of that on the table at the back. And Mum played badminton, and she was a school champ every year, and she had a best friend, had a tennis court, so she started playing tennis. And all the time when women were playing sport was frowned upon, she had an enlightened principal who was a woman, and she encouraged them to play sport, and that's when Mum started playing hockey. And then she pestered her parents and was given a bike, and she used to weave in amongst the buses and the busy traffic of Rangoon. And then she got given lessons in piano, which at this stage when she was writing these notes, she was only 55 years old, and at that she went through a phase of learning to play a keyboard, so she links it back to the piano she learnt at a younger age. And biking too became a serious passion of hers, obviously much later in life, that we'll come back to. So the school was backed by American missionaries, so it had all the razzmatazz of the American way. So Mum was very connected to America from a young age, and they had a grand graduation ceremony, all dressed in white, and they were all in tears as they left school behind. And there was only one girl from her cohort that went to university, so the rest had to. So Mum ended up doing what girls did at that time, went to commercial school to learn typing, shorthand and bookkeeping. But she passed with distinctions in typing and shorthand. I remember Mum, that's hard to learn in shorthand. So the first job she had was given to her by a parent of one of the students that her mother had taught, and it was while she was still in college, and it was a part-time job, but she fell into the job by luck, and it was because this person needed a good badminton player in his department, so he gave Mum a job in the Ministry of National Planning. And she worked in one of the offices for a short time and just landed a wonderful job again. And there was a team of American experts who were advising the government they needed a secretary, as one of theirs was on pregnancy leave. So the salary was double, so the Americans are paying double the regular salary, and she worked in the little building across from the old school. And it was a wonderful job, and the American was wonderful to work for. So they were friendly and informal, and often invited them out for functions and baseball games. And she had a boss from Venezuela, and they kept her on permanently. And she was there for a year or two until she left for New Zealand. So her father retired from the government just in time as they were phasing out English, and everything was to then be in Burmese. So he was lucky retirement option came up at that point, and at that point Uncle Peter had already left for New Zealand to stay with relatives, and my mum's older brother and sister, so Auntie Kay and Uncle Cyril, had left to go to the United Kingdom. And her parents were just not sure where to go, but then Mum said she always dreamed of New Zealand, and she says, I think I very much influenced their decision to come here. So she then, I think they all lived with Uncle Peter in Edgecombe for a short while, and then her parents bought a little cottage in Whakatane, which is where Mum worked, and it was quite a culture shock coming from a big city. But again, she joined the hockey club and soon had a wonderful time and played in hockey tournaments all over the country, represented the Bay of Plenty on a number of occasions. And after a while, she had the urge to travel and see more of New Zealand, so she joined the Air Force on an impulse. And because she was so keen on sport, it was a wonderful life. She's played tennis, badminton, hockey, indoor basketball. She never had a dull moment. She joined the band, like the brass band, which played the drums. And the Air Force, and she played in the military tattoo. And the Women's Weekly actually did a feature article on my mum. So her parents even came to the tattoo and were very proud of her. And she ended up working in Wellington on a temporary assignment, spent the last year in Wigram, and it was there she met her future husband. So this is actually a lovely story that I'm going to tell part of it because we're going to connect back to that at a later time. But she went to Hawaii. Okay, so she went to YMCA dance with a group of friends, and somehow Ray was at the same table, and she said, I didn't think we even noticed each other, but halfway through the night he asked her for a dance, and they just got along so well, and they danced the rest of the night, and then he made a date for her for the following Friday. And then he just smiled and waved at her during meals all that week, because they actually ate at the officer's mess, or in the mess hall anyway, but they didn't actually speak. He's smiling and waving at her. And then it was quite a surprise on Friday, because then he said he'd pick her up and take her for a movie in town. And from that day on, he never actually made a date. But every single day he would wait until I got out of the mess after meals, and simply we would meet up later. So then they spent all their spare time together for the next 4 weeks. So it was a quick romance, 4 weeks, and then it was time for our dad to go back to Auckland, because he was only in Wigram for a 6-week course. And it was not till the very last day that he asked Mum for her address. And I'm going to stop what she's written here because you're going to hear it later. But he wrote letters and she treasured every letter, and they made plans to meet up. And then she went to Auckland once or twice for hockey and tennis tournaments, and so they were meeting up. And then came August, they planned to go see her parents, so our grandparents in Whakatane, and Mum had a free Air Force flight to Auckland, and they were going to drive down the next day. And then out of the blue, our dad took Mum to the city, Auckland City, that night and bought her engagement ring. So they arrived home, back to Whakatane, engaged with a fiancé, she said, and her parents were a bit stunned. And Mum said that our dad was very overjoyed because he never had a mother, or that he could remember, so they all got along so well. And her brother threw an engagement party, and there were hockey friends, and they all just turned up and did the catering. And when they set the wedding date a year later, it all just sort of came together in a football club hall in Whakatane. There was a friend who was a chef, and he baked the cake, and then someone lent her the wedding gown, and it was all off the cuff, but a very happy day. And then she got out of the Air Force at some stage and was working in Auckland, and Mum and Dad rented a little batch behind a friend's house, and that was their first home after they were married, which seemed like paradise. They were pretty broke and had no furniture, but just had bits and pieces from their families, and she said they stayed there for a few months, then ended up in a little cottage in Whenuapai, which was lovely, and it was more than a batch, and it was there a year later that their first son was born, which was Brian. So she said that they were wonderfully happy, but the birth of her son made them so much more happy that she couldn't believe it was possible, and she was not accustomed to babies and tended to be a nervous and anxious mother, fussing over him. And about 2.5 years later, I was born, and that just completed their happiness. And she said she got the hang of babies by then and tended to be a bit more of a relaxed parent. And a year after Brian was born, her own mother had passed away, and that caused her great grief. And then a year later after that, then her dad passed away. So I don't remember those grandparents. I don't know if you do. But so then we only had Granddad Skellerns. This is the Skellern side of the family, and Mum described him as being a hard man because he had to bring up 3 boys on his own. But Mum thought that he'd softened by the time she turned up in his life, and there were many happy years with him. But then he too passed away before the kids were out, before we were teenagers. And then she writes about the final trauma of losing Dad with a heart attack just before he turned 40. And for years she was devastated, but she had us, and she was just trying to keep her spirits up. And she said that she felt, we 3 coped fairly well, and we went on from high school to uni, and then off to our chosen fields and got married. So she wrote at the age of 55, to see them happily settled and successful was the joy of her life, and she just wished that our dad could have shared that too. And she goes on to describe many good things about our dad, and that he shared the love of the outdoors. And then after Dad passed away, she went back to full-time employment. So I can remember this change from Mum doing jobs while we were at school, but being home the rest of the time, to going back to doing typing and shorthand and things. And at this stage, she said that she had a very busy, active life and a network of great friends who shared her passion for cycling and tramping and canoeing in the great outdoors. So I'm going to hand over to Brian now, who's going to take you through all of the adventures and other memories. Yeah.
Okey-dokey. So I don't think Catherine and I were quite aware of the effect of our father's death on my mother. I mean, she got on with life. She went from picking tomatoes part-time to, I think she got a job, later on it was post office, but administrative type work. But she started doing hobbies beyond, before that she'd done things like, macrame, knitting and copper,
beating,
sculpting, whatever you call it, baking, of course, all of the things that I guess stay-at-home mums might have done back then. But then she really, really got into this line dancing, like seriously, 3 times a week and tramping. And she'd go off on weekends and they'd go all over New Zealand. And through that she got into cycling. Some of her friends in the tramping club did cycling. And it just grew from there. She was playing tennis with other sets of friends. She was really quite a good tennis player. I think one point in her life she went to visit a friend in Hawaii or something, and because they were playing previously in Auckland, they were invited to play in the women's wives of the servicemen, and they actually won a medal or something. But she really liked all her outdoor things, particularly tramping, hiking, call it hiking now, and even did a little bit of kayaking. From our perspective, she sort of got in with life and started really enjoying it with all these other things. And that led to some really big adventures in her later years. She hiked the Inca Trail, went to Machu Picchu, all the places she ever wanted to. Her and the cycling friends she'd met through the tramping club cycled through the Canadian Rockies. There were bears, they slept in parks, and there's photo of bears in the middle of the road and they did not go left or right. This is in the day when you have to put pannier bags and pile up. It wasn't anything like you have now. She did the same sort of thing across the Fiji Islands. They just cycled around an island hopped to the next one, again with friends. Later on she went to Egypt and Petra and Jordan, saw all those places she'd seen in magazines. She cycled Molesworth in the South Island. I think she did the Otago. Well, we did it once, but I think she did it like 3 other times. And then eventually she went back to Burma. I remember her saying she never really wanted to go back to Burma because of the tragedy that, her early upbringing. But was it Uncle Cyril or somebody, it might have been Colleen and Gordon, they did go back to Burma because she was also worried that she wouldn't be allowed back in, or allowed back out once she got in. And she really treasured that because she was able to go to some of the places that she'd been to before. And then, other cycling adventures, the South Australian highway, the 12 Apostles, and cycling from Sydney to Brisbane, and hiking in the Kimberleys, and all sorts of that. She had awesome adventures. She was really happy, but after Dad died, we didn't realise until now how heartbroken she was. It was just very mechanical, and she had to raise 2 teenagers. She just got on with life, but it was really good to see her do these things much later on.
So I'm going to jump here and read out Mum's own words, what she wrote when she was 55, bearing in mind that she was writing this to hand on for generations to follow. So she said, I'm now in my 55th year, and I guess seeing so many dear departed ones, I've come to realise my mortality. I've often wondered about the futility of life, but I'm gradually coming to the belief that fame, success and material gain is not what it's all about. Not that I can free myself from this way of life, but I aspire to leave this place a better human being. For me, love is the essence of life. The love of my children is by far the greatest joy at this point. And I also love my love of friends and beauty of nature. Love also brings its sorrows with real or imagined slights, but I'm slowly learning to love unconditionally my children and to extend that love to all my fellow human beings is my goal. I went through some dark years when I was on my own bringing up 2 children, when I just marked time and shut myself from any feelings. But I've come through that now. My life is now fulfilled and happy, and it has been a celebration. I enjoy every day and I live it to the full. and I have a long way to go to becoming the person I would like to be, but I strive. Now, what you're about to hear is where you're going to need the tissues, because you're now going to hear Mum's telling her own story. And
I was born in 1938 when Rangoon was bombed. My mother and us 3 young children, of whom I was the youngest, were put in the last plane to leave Rangoon for India. My father could not come with us as he was a last ditcher and had to burn all government records. He later trekked over to India some months later, very ill with malaria. We arrived in India and lived in refugee camps till we got relocated and set up in housing. We lived in various cities in India for about 3 years till we got relocated home to Burma, and my father resumed his job in government and my mother as a teacher. I had a major event that changed my life. After graduation, my parents and I immigrated to New Zealand, and I lived in a small town in Whakatane for about 3 years. I got into a hockey team and spent a very active lifestyle, traveling in tournaments all over the Bay of Plenty. One day I noticed an ad to join RNZAF promising travel, which suited my lifestyle. And very shortly after applying, I got accepted and was on my journey to Christchurch. It was there, after a couple of postings, back and then again there, that I met my soulmate. We met at a dance at the YMCA, and after a brief dance together, he stayed and we spent the rest of the night together. And that night, he made a date with me to go into the city for a movie on Friday. But every day after that first meeting, he would be waiting for me outside the mess, and we spent all our free time together. He was only in Christchurch on a course for 5 weeks, and he had to return to Auckland. We continued a long-distance relationship, meeting up occasionally when I went on interbase hockey tournaments in Auckland. And then on my first leave home at the end of the year, I invited him home. We had met up in Auckland, and that's when I got a wonderful surprise. I forgot to mention a moment I always hold dear. Right up to the last day, he hadn't mentioned keeping in touch, and finally said, "Oh, I better get your address details." And I said, "Oh, are you going to keep in touch?" And he replied, "I'm going to marry you." And Ray proposed and said he wanted a ring on my finger before I returned to Christchurch. So we went shopping and bought the ring, and I arrived home engaged. I would just like to add at this point that I am now getting towards age 87, and the passion of walking has stayed with me throughout. These days, though, I am hampered with mobility and balance issues and encumbered with having to use a wheeled walker on my longer walks. However, I still go out regularly and still feel the joy of movement and being in the outdoors.
Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dream that you dare to, oh why can't I? Well, I see trees of green and red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands singing, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. And the dreams that you dare to, why, oh why can't I?
Hello everyone. I don't know quite who's there. I'm sure you're having a great day reflecting on grandma, my grandma, the life she lived and the people that she met. But I just thought I'd share a little bit about my perspective with grandma, and sort of add my thoughts on it. I was fortunate enough to stay with grandma with my fiancée Sandra just at the end of last year. What struck me most about staying with her is, firstly, it's the first time I'd stayed with her in a long time and able to spend a great amount of time with her. I was able to tell her about the travels that I've done since living in Europe, and all the places I'd been, really only to find out that she'd been there and done that all. She was amazingly well traveled and she'd done everything, and it was great to kind of share a little bit about my experiences and also hear what it was like when she was there and what she's done. And yeah, I think it was just really cool. It was really cool. I was able to tell her about the marathon that I was training for at the beginning of this year, and I shared with her my goal to go sub 4 hours, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I think I did a marathon once, and I think I did it in under 3 hours," and she sort of did it on a whim, and she was amazingly capable, even till when I knew her, which was obviously much later in life. She was always up and about, and it was just amazing. I remember her A-frame house on Herald Island. I remember the bunnies in the backyard that she had, and yeah, I think that's a place that we probably all remember, and it's very grandma. So I think, yeah, final thoughts for me is I miss chatting with her about my travels, and I think a life spent like hers, traveling with friends and seeing the world, is not a life that is wasted. I'll miss grandma. I'll miss being able to share that with her. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you, everyone.
Eve's eldest brother's Cyril's daughter, and Dave is my brother, but I'm here reading her beloved sister's words from my Auntie Kay. So Auntie Kay has sent this because she obviously couldn't be here, but it was absolutely fantastic that they got together. Kay is now 91. They got together just a few months ago. We're just so happy we made that happen.
She was in San Francisco, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So, dear Catherine, my thoughts on my dearest sister. Hi, I'm Kathleen, Yvonne's oldest sister. A few words about her. She has been someone who I could go to in times of sorrow, happy times, chat and show each other things we bought and talk about our time in Rangoon, all on FaceTime every week. I really don't know how I'm going to get used to not seeing or hearing her. And I think that's a song. No, it's okay. She lived her life to the fullest, followed all her dreams, adventure, grit, determination, curiosity, challenges she took in a stride, never complaining. Extremely independent and did things her own way. Enjoyed tramping, hockey, canoeing. Has seen a lot of the world, as we've heard. UK, USA, Australia, Peru. Trekked up to Machu Picchu, Egypt, Turkey, Venice. Our cousin Daphne used to live there. Cambodia, went to visit Rangoon and went backpacking further north. She has all the photos. Most of all, she loved her family, was so proud of Catherine and Brian as to what they have achieved, and loved being a grandma and great-grandma. Told me, beat you to it. May God bless her soul, and may she rest in peace. Love her, and we'll miss her forever. Can I just add a couple of words about Eve from my perspective? And I think we've heard about her travels and the love, but I think what stood out is her love of her family, from her kids, her children, grandchildren, and also, from my point of view, her brothers and her sisters. The four of them were very close. Eve actually was instrumental in bringing our family out from the UK when we came to New Zealand after our grandparents died. And the 8 of us, the 4 siblings and the 2 lots of parents, lived in their house in Christchurch, and little Summerhills has 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home, while our parents were getting their house built. And the love that she had for her siblings, I could feel Dave and I were like this when our dad died, Uncle Cyril, as what we've seen today with Brian and Catherine, because they've come together, they've looked after her for many years, but also latterly in the last few years being a bit more hands-on, obviously, as she needed a bit more assistance, and have just worked together fantastically, and she would be so proud of you seeing today. So thank you, guys.
So, my name is Sophie. I'm Jima was obviously my grandma, and I guess kind of to continue what has been said so far is, and I was actually lucky enough to visit her a few months ago. I'm probably just going to ramble. But I think something that we talked a lot about and was her travels growing up, and I have so many fond memories as a child. I think it's been mentioned, the Otago Rail Trail, and just a lot of adventures that we've been on, hiking up mountains in Garrawee National Park in Queensland. And I think it's only just kind of hit me as an adult that I've kind of been a little bit shocked and gone, oh, that was really impressive that she was doing all of that and all those things and all the bike trips and all the walking. And so I guess it's only now as an adult that I've really just been like incredibly in awe of her and how capable she was. And when I was here a few months ago, one of the other things we talked about, of course, was her great love and how much he meant to her. And just, yeah, it's hard to obviously put into words, it's been said, but she was an amazing person. And I think I'll have a lot of fond memories of her, including, as my brother mentioned, the A-frame house and the bunnies, and of course just the grandma-isms that have escaped me at the moment, but so many. But yes, she will be very much missed, and yes, I guess I'll hand over maybe to Courtney.
Hello everyone. I too haven't prepared a speech, but I've brought someone special. I'm the... Oh, this is challenging. I'm the eldest grandchild of Yvonne, Gina, and I've been very, very blessed with the amount of time I got to spend with her. Growing up in our family was weird because I didn't understand that Uncle Cyril wasn't actually my uncle. And that my auntie was Catherine. And I think it's even more fitting now. My husband at the back, his name is Thornton, but his name was Howard. So he has been called Howard by Gma for the last wee while, and so he will be forever known as Howard now. I also want to special mention my two fur babies that she's hopefully told some of you about. I do have two German Shepherds, and I know she was very, very fond of Johnsy when we were living in New Zealand. And of course, Tiaki, her great-grandson. I spent a lot of time with Grandma growing up, especially in my teenage years and my early 20s. Some of the best memories I have with her, also in the A-frame. I used to tell people on the island that I knew, and I still do, it happened last week, my grandma and my granddad lived in that A-frame, and I got to live in the top floor attic, and I thought that was the biggest flex. Now I'm coming to realise that the biggest flex is not actually living in the attic or sleeping in the attic, but it was having my grandma with me in my teenage years for some really pivotal conversations. Not understanding at the time the conversations we had about mental health and grief were from a place that she knew very, very fondly, and it really helped me in my relationship with her because I could just be unequivocally myself. She knew where I'd been, she knew some of the things, and that was something I really, really treasured with her. We were very open and honest with each other, including some of her later years. Oh, I went for a walk, but I didn't take my walking stick, or I didn't take my walking frame. Don't tell Catherine, don't tell Dad. Don't worry, that's our little secret. And everything that has been said and shown today, I absolutely echo. But I love my grandma, and I just have to live with it that she's here in spirit. So, that's all I have to say. My dad dedicated all of his life to was teaching grandma how to use technology. I remember actually vividly, I think maybe Gilmore Girls was on, and Gilmore Girls was on. I would watch it with my mum, and Dad would be at grandma's teaching her how to use the computer to upload photos, and I think that has been instrumental because that has enabled Catherine, to maintain a wonderful relationship with Grandma, with your mum, through Wordle, through Waffle, through FaceTime, through all the things. Likewise with Auntie Kay, and also with the amazing, amazing work of art through the book, through the videos, through everything that we're able to all share our grandma's life in media. So I just want that to be said, because you guys have worked a lot in the last few days and I know she would be so happy to see that. So that's sorry to interject.
My name's Drew. I'm on behalf of my Yvonne, but I'm mostly on behalf of my wife who died last year. And her and Yvonne worked at the post office years and years ago. They used to use stone tablets, no doubt. And they grew up together at the post office. We used to go to her island a lot, and I, because of my business, used to give her a hand in the garden out there. And always found when we used to go to her unit, you sit down on the couch and there's a thing that you guys know, a monthly activity list on the village. And I'd say to Yvonne, oh look Yvonne, this is on. You go that? No. Well this, do you go that? No. You know, we came upstairs, there's a big crowd downstairs, what's on down there? I don't know. But the thing I found when talking, and on the trip journeys to her, she's done the things she's done around the world and all that. I couldn't believe it. I said to my wife, we got in the car and I said, she's like a pocket rocket. She just doesn't stop. But she used to take her for walks. When we moved to Bethlehem, she come and teach. We'd take her for a walk. And she used to tramp ahead of us, walking away like mad. And so she enjoyed life to the last minute. And I just thought and getting back to this book, she didn't go this. She loved the village, but I got the impression she was happy with the family. You know, and the village was there. She loved the people in the village, but the family was her life. And it was just, and I just feel now that basically everybody, that people say we're like a departure lounge in the airport, and some people got on the aeroplane and other people were waiting for the departure lounge to get on the aeroplane. And now she's on the aeroplane. She's mostly wangled up the first class somehow. And she's on a next intrepid journey. So I wish her all the best.
My name's Dave. My father was Cyril, and which was the eldest of four siblings, as you've heard. Yvonne was the youngest. My sister's Nikki in the back there. So I've got a few notes. Looking at the memories, the most recent, one of the ones that stuck to me, Nikki alluded to, we came to New Zealand, we had to be sponsored to come here. Although my father was qualified, you still needed someone, New Zealand citizen, to sponsor you here. So that was one thing. The other was they actually put us up in their own house, their own house, 18 Fairmont Place in Christchurch. And I remember living there, and it was, it was very, we're very close. Catherine and Brian were small, but they put us up, and I'll be forever grateful to Ray and Yvonne for doing that for our family. Not only for doing that, but it gave me personally a start in life that I would have not had I stayed in England. I was on quite a different path. Here I've had opportunities, and I've been lucky enough to have a successful life, a happy life, and there's my wife Titi there. Wouldn't have met her if I'd been in England. So that is one thing that has stuck with me for a long time. I'm very, very grateful to Yvonne in particular for having us come to New Zealand. The other is, we actually had quite a long gap before. I wasn't that close to my aunt until very recently. I retired a few years ago, and I had this urge to go and find my grandparents, where my grandparents lay. And when Yvonne found out, she volunteered. I think she was 81 then, and she volunteered to show me where they lay. And so I tripped up to here, to Tauranga, and we did a road trip to Whakatane to see where my grandparents were. And I thought it'd be a quiet, uneventful road trip. It was my aunt to go there, but in fact, that was a very, it was a trip with a lot of memories. Aunt Eve talked all the time. She told me about my grandparents. She told me how it was growing up with Dad, as her brother, and her trip to New Zealand and how she came here, and a lot of what was said. I learned that from my Aunt Eve. And that's where I really began to know my aunt, was actually from that road trip. On that same trip, when I came here to Tauranga, she introduced me to a word puzzle game. They're called Wordle and Waffle. And since that time, we've been exchanging text messages every day, almost every day. And it wasn't competitive, but really kind of was. And we celebrated each other's success with emoji text, which was really a really nice way to get to know my aunt a lot better than I had before.
And on Sunday she did a Wordle in 3 rows.
Yes.
And waffle with 4 stars.
Yes.
And you say it wasn't competitive. Dave got there.
So that's where I really, and so I felt like we were connecting a lot more than we had in the past as I was growing up. So Yvonne taught me about my family, where we came from, and what Catherine read out was sort of all lined up and filled up the gaps. So that was really, really good. So I just want to say this. I just wanted to finish on a note, again from Aunt Kathleen, and we had an exchange of emails, and at the end she said, "We've lost a kind, beautiful person, my sister," and that's how I remember Yvonne, as a kind, beautiful person.
Thank you. Representing Greenwood Park, and as Brian and I went through all of Mum's things, we found something which I think she left there for a reason. Didn't appear to necessarily have religion in her life, but it seemed to have some spiritual meaning. So Denise has kindly offered to read this as a final part of this evening. Thank you.
You're welcome. I also realized, she was brought up, I think, religiously, and at the end of the day, that this was left in a book that's quite, I think, having to do with very spiritual things. Murray, my partner, will support me because I can't. My eyes aren't so great, and some of the words aren't so good. We're not sure who wrote this, are we?
No.
Except it says Ramsey Turner, box 50. I don't know who that is, if anyone knows. Then Almeida spoke, saying, "We would ask now of death." And he said, "You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of life. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide onto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond, and like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd, and when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor, is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the kings, yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless hides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered. Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountain top, when you shall begin to climb, and when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. And that is her. You're welcome. I know Heather, who is the reception, wanted to be here. And when I was initially there, she said, like all of us, we had a great loss. But I also said to her, but we had the opportunity to be around her and get to know her. So we have a choice how to look at something. And I'm so blessed that I had the chance to be with her for so long. So thank you so much.
It's recording, so
So Rata, yeah, tell me about Hannah.
On the last day that Yvonne was alive, she'd given in that day and she used a walker. We met each other in the corridor. We both had walkers. And I said to her, how can we have a hug today? And she said, with difficulty. So I said, you hang on to one handle and I'll hold on to the other and we can have a hug. And we did.
That's lovely.
Was it, what time of day was that?
That must have been Wednesday. She was
Oh, it was
getting
the
her
week.
feet done.
No, it was Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It was
Tuesday,
Tuesday,
rather.
yeah.
So was she going to?
Yes.
Oh, because I was wondering if it was after she came back from my house. Because she had her feet done and then she came over to me.
And Pip, is there anything you'd like to say about
Yeah, I live just through the wall from Yvonne, so we used to just keep tabs on each other from time to time. What I did was, especially after she had that bad fall about 2.5 years ago, check her curtains every morning,
Yes.
and if she hadn't opened her curtains by 9 o'clock, I'd call the staff on her.
Yes.
Talk about bossy old biddies. But, I think she found that quite reassuring.
Yeah.
The other thing I used to do, as you and Brian know, is sit on the deck from time to time with my harp or my guitar and sing. I used to quite enjoy that.
It's so appreciated you playing that.
It was
yeah.
really for Yvonne, that one.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Jackie.
And we used to message each other every morning at 9 o'clock to make sure we were both alive. But for some reason, that last morning, I was staying at my daughter's and I had such a lot of stuff going on. I never messaged her that morning.
She was gone by then.
Yeah,
So she was gone the night
but
before.
for about ever since she had that fall in the bathroom, we've done that every day. And then on the one day, I just can't.
She probably let you know it was okay not to do it.
Yeah, I think she was no longer there. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you, ladies, for sharing those.
Yeah.